announce the event. And then, of course, if you have questions during the course of it, you're welcome to it, right? So I'm recording and putting this on YouTube for other members' benefit, but you're here today, and so I want to help answer questions if you have them, if I have the answer. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Hello and welcome to Single Life Today. This afternoon we have a travel special, mapping your future, your vacation future amidst COVID-19. And so we're going to talk about some really lots of details. And my job today, my name is Tammy. I'm in leadership here at Singles Travel International and Single Life Today. And we're going to see where we can go today. What is it that we're able to do and what are we not able to do? So let's go ahead and get started with this presentation. First of all, I want to ask who in the room, and you're welcome to speak or put it in the chat, who feels like this right now? Completely frustrated with the whole travel scenario. Okay, I see some hands and some nodding. Yeah, for sure. How about this? Anybody angry? This guy's mad. I am. I haven't been on vacation in a year. Anybody confused?
Yes.
Yeah. There's so much information. So let's get started and see if we can unravel some of the mysteries here together. So nowadays, when we go to plan a trip, I don't know if this is your response, but this is where I'm at. I got to do what? So we thought packing was hard. You thought booking your excursions in advance was time consuming. We thought that getting those specialty dinners booked and shows, I mean, vacations were becoming somewhat of a project for a lot of us, especially for those of us that just like to show up and have a good time. So here's a little bit of the landscape in terms of what's going on right now if you travel, because there are places that are open, right? So there's testing before arrival. Most places right now that are going to take travelers from the United States want you to do a test before you get there, but not everywhere, and I'm going to share some of those with you. And the periods are varied. It could be anywhere from they want you to take a test within 48 hours of arrival to 2 weeks, from what I found. You have to fill an online health questionnaire. There's screening when you get to the airport when you get there. You've got to take a second test when you get there. You've got to take a test before you get back into the US. You might have to quarantine when you get there, depending on your test results. You have to prove that you have insurance in case you get sick there and you have to go in the hospital. How are you going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that? Then, of course, there's the mask wearing, the social distancing, the cleansing, the hand washing, the sanitizing, and everything else that we're doing at home. So that seems like old hat to me now. The rest of this stuff is new. And then, of course, negative results and the consequences of that and the expenses of that. So with all of those things in place, I would say there's probably at least 4 to 5 on this list that you would have to engage in if you're going to take a vacation these days.
Tammy,
yeah.
I don't know about everyone else, but all I am seeing is the calendar page. I'm not seeing a list. I don't see any other. Now I see you.
Thank you. How's this?
I don't see everyone.
Exactly.
I don't see everyone either. I just have your screen and
you won't see all the people in their group, but you should see the screen now that says, what do I got to do what? Everybody give me a thumbs up for that?
yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I just went through them all verbally, so I'm just going to go to the next screen, but I'm saying that there's probably 4 or 5 of these things that you now have to do on vacation every time you go. So that's in addition to all the other obligations that we had. So where can we go right now? There are several sources that are really high level that are keeping tabs on all of this. There's one master list. So if you Google where can US travelers go right now, you're going to find multiple websites. So everybody's getting in on this because they want you to go to their site. But these are some of the sources I use, and if you want me to share them with you afterward, I'm happy to do that. I like the one from Travel and Leisure because it does have the State Department recommended levels. And so if you're wondering about a destination in terms of COVID-19, but you also want to consider some of the other warnings, because there are other reasons why we shouldn't go to some places, which, by the way, when I was looking at the list, there are a lot of countries available, but I was thinking to myself, well, you know, I remember these places because I saw them in the news. There were wars in those places. There is major crime and all kinds of crazy things going on. So although they're open, they're not necessarily recommended, neither by the State Department nor by me in today's presentation. So those are a couple of good ones, and I'll share with you guys at the end. But I digested all of this today so that I could give it to you in one easy spoonful. What else I took into consideration was not where we're able to go, who's inviting us, and what are the terms that we have to get in there. But then I also looked at, and this is what kind of sparked my interest to deliver this information to you today, was a report that came from an organization, and it has to do with the vaccines and the number of places where 60% of the adult population will be vaccinated over the next 3 years. So I'm making an assumption that the places that we're going to want to go to as, you know, US travelers, we live in first world, we have first world lifestyles, and we're not going to probably want to go to places that are going to present imminent danger to us, whether it's COVID or any other reason. So we're probably going to want to focus on where it's safe for us to go, because we are fortunately in the first round. So being a US traveler, that gives us access like no one else. And there's just a few other places like that, which you'll see today. So most of the residents in the first world are getting these vaccines that are listed on the page. They're already in full, you know, motion. Most of us in the room here today probably already got their vaccines based on what I'm hearing. Then there's the emerging economies, and we're looking at maybe mid-2022. A lot of them are depending on the contracting with the Russians and the Chinese for their vaccines. And then there's a huge population in the low-income countries that are depending on the organization called WHO to give them their vaccines. And there's about 85 countries in that list, and they're not going to be finished, meaning when I say 60% or 70% of their adult population being vaccinated won't be until the end of 2023. So that definitely affects where we go if you're on the same assumption that I am, which is we're being vaccinated, we're in a major healthy environment, and so we want to be in a healthy environment, or we want to mitigate or limit and minimize our risk of catching COVID. So I took that extra layer. So I took the list of where can we go, where are people going to get vaccinated first, and then of course all of those elements that we have to go through, because we also like things to be easy, right? And so already this isn't easy, and so a lot of people are saying, I don't want to deal with this. This isn't vacation for me. But I contend that it's worth it. There were always challenges with travel. For example, going to Africa or to Asia, South America. When I went to Colombia, I had to get yellow fever and I had to get typhoid. And so every time I go somewhere relatively exotic, and by the way, those are my favorite because I like to learn new things and see new places, things that we would consider bucket list, there are challenges already involved. So at some point, I imagine that the challenges we're facing with COVID will be right in line with some of the other things that we just have to line up before we go. Some people aren't ready yet, and that's totally understandable because there is so much extra. In addition to wearing then the masks and having to keep the distance, which is an extra challenge for singles. So this was the map that I used to coordinate and help you guys understand where it's going to make sense for us to travel in the next couple of years. So on the left-hand side, there's a legend. So the dark green, first of all, the dark green I like to associate it with money. The first world countries that are represented in the dark green is where they're going to get the vaccines by late 2021. And by the way, this came out last week. This was January 22nd. So this data is relatively new, and it comes from the Economist Intelligence Unit. That's the link at the bottom. And again, if anybody wants it, you can just let me know in the chat and I'll share this with you. So there's an article associated with it. So the dark green represents the areas of the world that are going to have their that 60 to 70% of the adult population will be vaccinated by the end of this year. Over on the right, you can kind of see Hong Kong and Singapore are green, right? So those are two countries. You can see a very small little country there in the Middle East, and that's United Arab Emirates. And then you're moving towards the left a little bit. I don't have my arrow here, but mostly Europe, Scandinavia and Europe, at least the southern Scandinavia parts. The top one, that's Russia, that light green one that goes across the top there. So Scandinavia, the most part of Europe, and then just the Ukraine and Belarus are those red ones in Europe. So that's right next to the USSR. And so they're looking at a long term here. But when you move over to the left of the map, you see the United States and Alaska, which is still the United States, obviously. So, and then there's one little country that I was looking at in South America, and I'm like, what is that? So it's French Guiana. So curiously, I noticed that Vietnam is also coming up next year. So I made a conclusion that if it was a French colony, that they were getting the benefit of that association. So their vaccines are coming faster because they're colonies of the European country of France. So the dark green by the end of this year. The light green is looking at the 60 to 70% of the adults will be vaccinated by mid 2022. So by mid next year, a lot more of the world opens up. So obviously Canada, Greenland, Mexico, in South America, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina are represented in big ways. And then on the bottom right, that's Australia, New Zealand. South Africa starts to open up. And of course, Russia. And then you've got Oman and Turkey. And then orange by late 2022. So by the end of 22, a very good portion of the world is opening up. Pretty much some countries, that middle on the right-hand side there, that's Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, etc., the scannies. That's that big red section over to the right, and then most of Africa. So a lot of people I'm hearing, oh, I'm going to do my bucket list Africa trip next year. I'm recommending putting off that till 2023. Any questions so far about the map?
So what I'm understanding is once we have this COVID shots, that we can still catch the virus, but it won't necessarily kill us. Is that right?
My talk today, Jen, not to put you off, I'm not, I'm not a medical, I'm a travel person. So I'm looking at a forecast for us as far as interactions with the vaccine and how we can spread or catch it, that I'm going to leave up to the doctors. By the way, Dr. Whalen at 3 o'clock, you can ask her that question if you want to, because she'll she's not a COVID expert, but she's a doctor, so she may have the answer to that.
Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Mary Lou. I'm wondering about our trip in November. I'm noticing that the top of Africa is red, and we're supposed to go to Egypt and Israel. So how will that impact us?
Yeah, so we're going to have to wait and see, but Egypt is definitely up in this area here. And right now, as of today, based on the information that I read, Egypt, we are able to get into Egypt. The question will be, we're going on a cruise ship. And so we don't know today how they're going to manage the testing, because we do have to have a test before we go in. So it's open right now. And I'm going to talk about regions and then share my thoughts on the cruises and when we think we can expect some action on that.
Thank you.
So I gave you the map, and here I listed for you areas of the world that are open to us right now. The ones that have the asterisk, like you can see, well, I should have put one on the first line because that's all, for the most part, okay for us. So US, we're able to travel. We're doing it with safety protocols in place. Many of you have attended our Travel with Confidence presentation, where we talk about how we're traveling now with Singles Travel International. Every member on the vacation is signing a commitment, and we're wearing masks, and we're doing the social distancing, and we're sanitizing, as are our vendors, our bus drivers, and everybody that we're coming in contact with. And the nice part is that you have the concierge as your leader, and as a leader with one of our groups, they're taking on the responsibility of making sure that everybody's relatively cooperative, right? And if you're not, you're gonna have a private talk, and too many times of rebellion will take you off the trip. So we want people to enjoy themselves, to feel as safe as they possibly can, and we're sending a message to travelers who are single that don't care about the safety. Then we say, then it's fine, because you have the opportunity to go off and do your own thing and do the solo thing. And if you're not really concerned about yourself or others in the group, then you're free to do your own thing. You wouldn't feel the same constraints. But most of our members that I'm talking to would like to travel in a safe environment. And so we're going to continue that for as long as it takes. So traveling in the US, I feel like we're going to see some movement in Alaska. We're going to be doing some land programs in Alaska. Since the announcement last week that any vessel larger than 100 passengers is not allowed into Canada until February of 22, means that the entire Alaska cruise season is now out. It's out the door for 2021. There will be no Alaska cruising unless they change the Jones Act, which I don't know that if that's going to happen this year or not. Seems like a good solution, but it has to be reviewed by the government, and it may not happen. So if that doesn't happen, that means that any vessel that leaves the US and comes back into the US must either be built in the US or stop in a foreign port. So that's where Canada became that foreign port for the Alaska cruises, and that's how they complied. So if they can't stop in Canada, then they can't do Alaska. So we're going to be doing some Alaska land programs, and I think you'll see more of that. You're going to see national parks. You're going to see our weekend getaways, and some of our weekend getaways will be extended. We'll have a choice, weekend or full week. Mexico, wide open. In fact, Mexico is one of the places right now that you don't have to have a test to get in for now, but you do need one to come back. So I'll talk about that. And then there's a lot of places in the Caribbean. So the Dominican Republic right now, as you can see, does not require a test to get in. And you're not required to quarantine. Same with Mexico. So that's why those are two places that are relatively open. Some of you say, well, I don't know if I want to go to those places. If everyone's going there, then that's a personal decision. So all of these other countries, these islands in the Caribbean, are open to US travelers. Obviously, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands belong to the United States, but they have varying degrees of obligations to get in, pretty much across the board. You take a test before you get there within 72 hours. You fill out an online form that they're calling a health form. It's an affidavit. You're attesting that you don't have any symptoms. When you get there, this is where it varies. Some of them require a test halfway through your vacation or within 5 days because they want to see that you're still okay. And some do not. And then of course on January, and I don't know if I put this in my presentation, no, I didn't. So, but everybody knows as of January 26th, now any airline flight that comes into the United States with passengers, those passengers have to provide a test that was taken within 72 hours. So for example, in our Mexico trip, we're providing a complimentary test at the resort for members who are with us. It's included in the package so that they have a documentation to show at the airport when they come back. And that's available in the countries. I think if it's not obvious, I would just say that tourism is the #1 product in many of these places. And so they're very motivated to make it easy for travelers to come and to return home. One of the things that and they're very fast moving these days. It's amazing to me how responsive. The minute we found out, on January 26th, we found out about that rule, having to have a test to come back into the United States. Well, by the next day, all of the resorts in Mexico were offering free stays to anybody who didn't pass the test. So they really pivoted very quickly. And at first they were charging for it. It took another 24 hours. And then they said, okay, we're just going to do it for you. It's the lesser of the tests that you have to show when you get on the airplane. So if you fail that one, and then you have to take a more detailed test, then you'll have to go to the doctor. That's at your own expense. And then of course, if you are tested positive at the resort that we're staying in, for example, it's a free stay. And then they tried to say to me, but if there's 2 people and the other person isn't sick, they have to pay for their stay. And I was like, woohoo, we're single. So everybody has their own room, they're quarantining in their own room. And, so it's kind of like a free vacation, so to speak, with some guidelines, I'm sure. So where else can we go? Dominican Republic, so we're kind of keeping an eye out for that. All of these other islands are available and you're able to do it. I think the average test could be, and this is the other part too, there's an added expense to your vacation with all of this. Because if you have to take a test before you go and a test when you come back, and a lot of the places are requiring insurance so that they want to make sure that when you're over in their country and you fall ill, that you have the insurance to cover the payments. I found one instance, Cambodia, that they're now charging everybody who enters the country $2,000. And if you don't use it, then they'll give it back to you. But they're going to give you a test. And then if you're negative, you have to be quarantined, and that goes into a government facility, and that's where that $2,000 comes from. I hope they put me in a 5-star hotel. So outside of the Caribbean area, Central America, couple places, Panama and Costa Rica and Ecuador, I think have the easiest in and out possibilities. Costa Rica just lifted their requirement to have a test before you get in. So we'll be looking at that. South America, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, French Guiana, and Peru. I met somebody years ago to French Guiana. I said, I don't know if people would be interested, but now I bet they will be. It's a tiny little country on the north coast, north of Brazil, on the Atlantic side. So I'm sure it's got, all of these places have wonderful things to see and do. We're just, not all of us, we're all at varying degrees of our maturity in travel. So if you haven't been to, Rome and Paris and Rio de Janeiro, you want to do that first. But for those of us who have traveled a lot, it's interesting to find a brand new place and learn some new things. So also, as I showed you on the map, Hong Kong and Singapore, well, that's a long way to go. I'd say I'd tuck that in my pocket for later on when I can combine it. Same with United Arab Emirates. And then, of course, we saw that Europe and Scandinavia, fingers crossed on summer and perhaps the fall. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, so we have a lot of European programs this summer, and a couple of them are, well, what I would say that I've seen this since January as opposed to last year, because of our members getting vaccines. Up until January, all of our trips that were outside the United States that were canceled, I mean, when it came to final payment, everybody pretty much bailed. Now that we're seeing members getting vaccinated, which again, another benefit of being 50 plus, you know, quite a bit of us are over 65. So we're scoring twice now as singles and over 65. Well, I would say 50% are moving forward with their plans and are hopeful, but we know that it may not happen. So at the very end, I'm going to talk about the cruises here. This is at the end of my list because I have the least amount of information about the cruises. So far, they're holding at their voluntary pause until the end of April, and they're working very hard to get those ships ready. There are other factors that come into play. And I promise that as we get more information, we'll provide that to everybody because everybody's interested. Of course, the majority of the fans of cruises say, number one, it's not fair. All these other modes of transportation are going. They're taking precautions. Why couldn't the cruise lines? I personally think that if people want to cruise, they should be able to cruise. If I know my neighbor just came from a cruise and I'm quarantining, I'm not gonna go to her house when she comes home from the cruise for 2 weeks, right? But anyway, that's a little bit of my personal. And so, and then they're saying that once cruising is back out, it probably will be the safest. That's relative, right? So it just, it happens to depend on the precautions that they take to let the passengers on board. And I'm pretty sure that most of them, they have every bone in their bodies in the leadership of the cruise lines to make this the safest mode of travel. So when will we cruise? Hopefully this summer on a limited basis, because we have to be able to stop in the ports. And so you saw the map with the countries, and that was a great question, Mary Lou. You know, we're supposed to go to Egypt and Turkey and Israel. And so if there are restrictions to those places, it could mean that we go and we don't do one of the ports, or it could mean that it doesn't go. So we'll monitor that closely until final payment, obviously, and hopefully up until the date of departure. Cruises toward year end will more likely be Caribbean. That's my prediction, that the Caribbean will start to open up. More and more of these, as you can see, there are many areas. Mark, I know you're on one of the Star Clippers, so those go to smaller islands, and some of these smaller islands are on the itinerary, so that's a positive sign. But I think the challenge will be with all of this testing. So for example, I'm going to the Bahamas in May, and so I have to take a test before I go. I have to take a test after 5 days in the country. We have to quarantine, but we're going on a catamaran. So there's a group of us that's going on a catamaran. So that's considered our quarantine station. So if you were to go to the Bahamas and stay in a hotel, the Bahamas does have a minimum 14-day quarantine. But if you go out on your own vessel, you are, that is your quarantine. And we can get off in the islands, curiously. We have to wear masks and everything, but 5 days in, we have to take a test. So I don't know where we're gonna take that yet. We have to figure that out. And then I have to have a test 3 days before I come back into the United States. So I really can only stay 7 days, right? Because I've got to take one before I go. I've got to take one within 5 days. That 5th day will also serve as my test to take the flight home. So we were talking about who wants to come early, who wants to stay late. Well, that affects our ability to come early and stay late. So, but it's February. So I'm not going to worry about that yet. Full steam ahead. We'll deal with what we have to deal with when the time comes. And I'm hoping that we don't have to take it 5 days in, but if we do, we do. And it'll probably be a couple $100, and we're going to have to stop in the middle of the vacation and go to a medical center and get a test. So That'll be interesting, so stay tuned. But that is the Caribbean, and that is our best option right now, other than a couple of these other places. So what next year? More USA, Mexico, Caribbean, more cruising based on the ports that are available. And then by mid-year, according to the map, some more places will have 60 to 70% of their population, their adult population, vaccinated. And so we're looking at opportunities for Brazil, for Chile, which will probably open up Antarctica more for us, Argentina, Saudi Arabia and Oman, Australia, New Zealand, because they're closed. Australia, by the way, as an island, is completely closed until February of 2022. So I can tell you guys that Singles Travel International is going to have an Australia, New Zealand opportunity toward the end of 2022, if not for New Year's, because they're in the opposite hemisphere. So we would go like, you know, November, December, January type of things when it's summer there. South Africa, and Asia-wise, Vietnam, South Korea, and Japan. So we'll be looking at those destinations for mid to end of 2022, and toward the end of the year, China and India. Not until 23 do I recommend what we all know. We're baby boomers. We are the ones that got the vaccines first. And we love our bucket list. And so many of us were on target for visiting all these places, the 1,000 places you got to see before you die, right? And so I'm going to say that holding off till 2023 is a great idea for a number of reasons, for your safety, your personal health, but also you're going to spend a lot of money on these bucket list trips. And so I think that you'll want to fully enjoy them. And for some of us, you know, all of these extra protocols and steps that have to be taken, plus the mask wearing and the distancing, just adds extra burden. And so for that, you know, trip of a lifetime, that African safari or the Antarctica cruise, things that are going to be upwards of $10,000, my recommendation is to wait until 2023. So I know I said that I would give you 3 to 5 years. So after 2023, we should be smooth sailing, literally, more land, cruises as they become available, and then the floodgates will open and everybody should be able to go pretty much where they want to go. It's a scenario of shifting sands, right? So I want you to be aware that everything that I've said, my little disclaimer, is based on my research, my 40 years of experience in the travel business. My mom started our company in 1980, and I've been to over 55 countries, and it's just a precaution to monitor your own personal situation. So regardless of where you're going, check the regulations, check the statistics for the country that you're visiting. Check the rules for the destination. So do you need a test or don't you need a test? And how is the medical when you get there? And then of course the US State Department warnings, because there are other reasons why you may not want to travel to one of these countries. So keep your eyes open, stay up to date. We promise to be here giving you at least a monthly update on our Travel with Confidence presentations here at singlelife.today. So you will know what we know. And of course, if anybody has information that they want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you as well. All of our events are open format. Everybody gets to come in, say hello, introduce each other. We get to know each other. We're really becoming friends, and we're keeping each other's back. We're supporting each other. We're cheering each other on with all of the things that we're going through in life. And so we're doing this together, and we're going places, right? And tomorrow we're going to Istanbul, Turkey, virtually. We have a guide for 90 minutes. So stick with us, and we promise to keep you up to date. And my final conversation is, it's a huge world. It's worth waiting for.
Amen.
And I certainly have a lot of places that I still want to go to. And I love every place that I've ever been. And I'm sure I'll love every place I ever go, no matter what the challenge is, what the hassles, because there are people on the other side of that world that are just like me. They feel the same thing, they desire the same things, they need the same things. We are all very much the same, except that none of you are crying right now, except for me. But it is a big world, it's a beautiful world, and it's worth the wait. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today at Single Life Today and Singles Travel International.